Well, Rich, the NBA Live series goes back a long, long time, but we tend to focus on recent years. And what you've seen is a once storied franchise kind of collapse, and then a rebuild effort put into place that has failed along the way, whether it was the complete reboot with NBA Elite 11, which was canceled, NBA Live 12, which could have been, was skipped over a year. NBA Live 13 would have been a digital download, and that one was canceled. Then we got NBA Live 14 on the PS4 and Xbox One, and that game was disastrous, would probably be a fair way to put it, and really kind of sunk any chance that the series was going to return to any prominence. NBA Live 15 sold fewer copies, even though it got better, and NBA Live 16 now it appears has sold even fewer than that. So we're in a situation now where we have some data which is believed to be accurate, and that shows that basically no one bought NBA Live, and relatively speaking, no one bought NBA Live when you compare it to any game on the market, not just NBA 2K16. So we're at a crossroads here where we discussed the possibility of, can NBA Live survive in the past? And it's been a shaky situation. And now it's really even more difficult to wonder how this series could hang around any longer with these type of sales numbers. So what we know is from data that comes from NPD, from a source that receives the information and extrapolation from numbers, that NBA Live apparently sold just over 8,000 copies in September, which is about a week's worth. But again, you have to consider that all video games, especially sports games, are front-loaded. So those are going to be the heftiest numbers. That's in comparison to over 1.1 million in the same period for NBA 2K16. So, Rich, what is your reaction to this? Because I have my own, but I've been saying it for a couple of years now that I'm not sure how this series can continue to go on, but I'm curious, what is your reaction to those type of numbers and the potential future of the series given that?
Well, I have a few reactions. Number one, I wish, and I've wished for years, that companies would report sales, not have to be figured out, derived, based on rumor, innuendo, and hypothesis.
Is there any entertainment sector that does not release those numbers? I mean, you get them from movies. It doesn't matter if the movie bombed or is a huge hit. You get the numbers. Music industry, it's just stunning to me that, I guess it's because they're publicly traded companies. Yeah. But that to me would seem like that's even more important information to publicly put out, instead of just publishing your whenever you have a huge hit on your hands and then just ignoring the ones that have suffered.
Yeah, so I wish that sales figures were reported by the companies that make these games. I don't know why they're not. They are a publicly traded company. Electronic Arts, Take-Two, Sony, right? These are all companies that are publicly traded, or their subsidiaries are publicly traded. They report earnings, right? But they don't report some of the details. So because of that, that's why you have this speculation. That's why you have this rumor. That's why you have this innuendo. So this report that came out that says that NBA Live sold 8,000 copies, we don't know if that's true. Now, I think we all probably would agree that, based upon anecdotal evidence, right, based upon when we go on to Live, seeing the lack of the numbers of people playing the games, that it has not sold well. So let's put aside the fact that we don't know the actual numbers, but let's assume that the sales numbers are poor. It's upsetting to me for two reasons. Number one, I love sports video games, and I love the fact that there are two legitimate NBA games on the market. I think it makes the entire industry better. It makes it better for people who play games. It makes it better for people who make the games. It makes it better for the league, the real sport. So it's upsetting for that regard. And it's also upsetting to me because these are real people that make these games, that pour their heart and soul into them. These are careers that are on the line. These are not faceless corporations. These are people that I have spoken to and met in person and had come on the show. People like Sean O'Brien, for example. Now, obviously, we're all big boys, right? And we all face various things in our careers. So nobody is immune. So, that's what bothers me the most about this, is because the way that people talk about these things doesn't, I think, in a lot of situations, take into account that there are real people behind this. And I get a sense of sort of a glee about how poorly NBA Live seems to be doing. And if the NBA Live series disappears, that's not good for anybody in any way, right? And so those are the two things that I sort of, take away from hearing these.
Yeah, I have a bit of a different perspective on it, and it's not that losing NBA Live would be tragic. I don't think that's the case. Right now, it's not competition. I mean, it's just something that exists. Selling under 1%, well under 1% of gaining that market share is not competition. I mean, that's just a bug that's being squashed. You had Sean O'Brien tell you that if they could just get 10% or 15%, right? He was comparing it to the shoe, the world of shoes, right? So, or if you could be an Under Armour to the Nike, you can do well. Well, they're not. I mean, that's the bottom line. And so, there are investors involved here, and if a project is a loser, they are eventually going to have to cut that out. And so, I mean, we all want competition and we all want alternative games, but if one is just not viable, it's sticking around, all they're going to do is cut their investment in it, and it's just going to be a half-assed attempt next year. They've done this in the past where they've gotten close to canceling a game, kept it, done nothing with it. You can even look at MLB 2K13 after MLB 2K12, where it was the same game with a roster update. I mean, that's what it becomes, and that doesn't do any good to anybody either. And NBA Live is not pushing NBA 2K16 at this point either. NBA 2K16 is doing their own thing. So the idea that losing Live would hurt people, I'm not sure if that's the case. I'd rather see, and I think based on some of the tweets I received, people would rather see that investment put into other projects, and instead of just cutting out NBA Live doesn't necessarily mean you have to cut everybody out along with it or take that money and just pocket it, right? So there's different projects that they can look at too. But it is a difficult situation, especially since, look, going back, NBA Live was my preferred game all the way through NBA Live 10. I mean, I preferred NBA Live 10 over NBA 2K10, and a lot of people did. But then EA, for whatever reason, decided, hey, our sales look like they're going down. We're going to just completely scrap it and do something wild with it that nobody asked for. And so they've been trying to dig themselves out of it, and they haven't helped themselves along the way. They've made a number of mistakes along the way. That NBA Live 14, there were people who gave it a chance. I mean, we were one of them. And if we were just normal consumers, we would not have gone and bought NBA Live 15 after that. And a ton of people didn't. And that's what happened. And right now, I think what you have is a brand in NBA Live that it cannot be repaired. No matter what they do, there's no way they get out of that hole. I don't think there's any way that happens. So to continue to throw money at it doesn't make sense either. And that's the difficult situation that they're in.
It is amazing, really, when you think about it, and obviously with the benefit of hindsight. It's amazing when you give somebody else an opportunity, what they do with it. What NBA 2K did with the opportunity that NBA Live did with it while going away is one of the most incredible stories, I think, in video gaming history, right? Because you had two franchises that were similar and relatively close, right? I mean, you might be 20% in one direction or the other, but they were relatively close in overall market awareness and appeal. Then you had NBA Live disappear, and in that time, not only did NBA 2K get better, NBA 2K went into another stratosphere with, the Jordan game and then the Legends series on top of it. And then, with the next generation, being so appealing to so many people because of the look of it. And then in the last year or two, just getting the game play on the court so much better and offering so many ways. And obviously plenty of controversy around 2K as well, right? So they weren't perfect, but
no, not even.
They did a lot more things right than they didn't. And because of the massive hole that Live dug for itself, they were able to overcome those mistakes. And it's so, yeah, it's amazing. Like, if NBA 2K had just sort of plodded along and sort of maintained, gotten a little better, a little better, and Live comes back, it might not be like this. But yeah, looking back in hindsight, NBA 2K grabbed that opportunity and ran so much farther with it than I think anybody expected it to be, to where now I think, Brian, even if NBA Live 15 had been, an 8.5 out of 10,
wouldn't have mattered.
I don't think it would have mattered.
No.
That's how far down the franchise is among the people who know and understand sports games. What's amazing to me is that the brand EA and NBA Live and a cover athlete on the game that people recognize in Westbrook really doesn't even get that casual fan walking into the Walmart, walking into the GameStop and saying, "Oh, NBA Live 16, it's got a player on it. It's got NBA. It's got EA on it."
The EA logo. Yeah.
That's what blows me away. Like, I would have thought that by accident there would have been at least some sales that would come from that market, but clearly that market just doesn't exist anymore.
It doesn't. And what's even more amazing about it is NBA 2K did that. They squashed the competition without having to acquire an exclusive license, right? They did it with just dominating the market, improving their product yearly, and becoming kind of a cultural phenomenon. So, Rich, you're the pro business guy, Rich. If you were making a decision here, I mean, you seem sympathetic to the situation for EA, but if you were making the decision and you're losing money year over year, and you're not growing, you're shrinking. I mean, there's really very little in the way of options for them at this point, unless they turn around and do something different with that investment.
Well, and see, this is what makes it so frustrating for me, right? Because I'm a P&L guy. I'm a dollars and cents guy. To me, what does it cost to make? What is the revenue that it derives? And then where does it fit in your overall portfolio? We don't know what it costs to make NBA Live 16, right? We don't know what the licensing costs. We don't know what the development costs are. We can assume that they are not insignificant, right? Because
no, the licensing certainly isn't. And they also have contracts. They also have contracts with companies like Synergy, which are not cheap as well.
Right. And you're paying 30, 50, 75 salaried employees to make this game for, the course of a year. I mean, that's, So, let's say it costs $57 million to make. Well, if it sold 8,000 copies, it didn't generate that $57 million back, right?
Right.
So, that in a vacuum is, a decision that anybody could make, to potentially kill it. But EA's stock is through the roof. Their net income in the last couple of years has gone way up. They are in much better financial shape than they were 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago. The NBA is an important brand for a company like EA Sports. EA is moving towards a subscription model every year, more and more. Peter Moore and Andrew Wilson both said as much in an interview last week that I read. The investor call is coming up. I'm sure they're going to be talking about all the digital revenue they had.
Not for NBA Live, though.
Well, right, not for NBA Live, right?
Yeah.
So if you look at it in a vacuum, it's like, well, anybody would say kill it, but it's not a vacuum. EA is a profitable company. EA Sports is a vital part of that. FIFA generates a third of the company's income, right? So
Mm-hmm.
in a portfolio of FIFA and Madden and NHL and NBA, right? They don't have baseball. They don't have any of the other sort of fringe sports. If NBA disappears, it may not be a dollars and cents decision. They may decide to keep and promote the NBA because it's part of its overall EA access and other services that it may offer. It may overall still be worth it to have the NBA brand in your portfolio than not, even if the game itself is not necessarily generating, if it is losing money.
They can have an NBA product, they can have an NBA presence without it being NBA Live, right? That the name right now and the concept of the game in general is poison, I think, right now, and they don't have the features to differentiate from the competition either. And so when I tweeted out today, I asked people, what would you like EA to do with the NBA? Do you want them to continue live? Do you want them to do an arcade game? All these different, or what would you like to see them do with the NBA? I received well over 100 replies, and I'm going to throw up some sample tweets from that group. A handful of people who suggested just shutting NBA Live down and putting those resources into other games. Now, their ideas were college basketball and football, which we know why that's not happening right now. Baseball, which is not going to happen right now, and the other games EA already makes. So put that money into making NHL better, or to making FIFA better, or to making Madden better. Then there were some people who liked the idea that I had brought up last year, which was maybe EA needs to be a free-to-play, or NBA Live needs to be a free-to-play Ultimate Team game. People also thought, what if it was just like a $15 Pro-Am game, where maybe you do end up with microtransactions on top of that. Something interesting I didn't expect to hear back was that people want, there are some people who want just 5-on-5 basketball, just like a normal basketball game, but they want it to be more up-tempo, arcadey, kind of run and gun game. Back in the old days, when we had multiple options, you usually had that. You had a game where you were like, well, that's kind of the fast-paced one where you just, everybody's making threes, but it could be fun. Some people preferred that. So you don't have to go pure arcade to make a fun game. And they just want something that's different than different than 2K. Just you need something different. And that was kind of the idea from some people. NBA Jam came up a few times. It's been 4 years since the last NBA Jam released on 360 and PS3. But by far, the majority want a new NBA Street game. And this is well over 50% of the responses were bring back NBA Street, or we want an arcade NBA Street type game. So it's been 2007 was the last NBA Street game. That was right near the start of the 360 PS3 generation. And there's no competition in arcade sports games anymore. Now, the question is whether you can sell an arcade sports game for $60 these days. And you're shaking your head, no, Rich. That's probably the case. And there's different ways to go about it, whether it's a downloadable game. The problem then becomes that's a big investment to make. They put a lot of money into the technology for NBA Street Home Court, and they didn't get their return back on that. So there are concerns there, but I mean, is there more potential maybe with an arcade game going forward than a sim sports game? So that's kind of where things lean, though. Everybody wants basically. I mean, other than 2 or 3 responses saying they'd like NBA Live to continue as is, everybody wants something that isn't NBA Live. They want something, but they just know it's not what NBA Live is right now. And that's people have been saying that with their wallets for 3 years now. And at this point, you have to believe that EA they have to recognize that at the very least, that what they're doing, their strategy right now isn't working, and it's not going to work because whether it's a few years from now or not.
Yeah, but again, I mean, it's easy to say their strategy isn't working. We don't know what their true strategy is. Now, again, on the surface, right, their strategy is not to sell 8,000 copies. That's clearly, if that number is true, that is a
Yeah.
disaster, right?
Yeah.
Okay, again, so I'm not trying to sound delusional here. But again, the strategy is very different than tactics, right? There's the tactics of having a game and releasing it, but that could be part of an overall bigger strategy of maintaining your brand, right?
Hmm.
And EA's brand is about simulation sports games. It's in the game, right? It's about simulation style international football with FIFA. It's about simulation style NFL football with Madden. It's about simulation style NHL hockey with NHL. It is about simulation style NBA basketball with NBA Live. EA doesn't do street arcade games. They did, and they quit. And they quit because people stopped buying them. And I'm one of those people. I mean, you and I, Brian, have talked about what is one of both of our all-time favorite sports video games. The Bigs, right?
Yeah,
I
the
mean,
bigs.
the Bigs was spectacular. I loved NBA Street. I loved NBA Street Volume 2. I spent
Hmm.
hours and hours just on my own on my PS2 downstairs. My wife hanging out watching TV on one TV, and I would play NBA Street for hours. Doing the double dunks and flying through the air and stuff like that. But people don't do that anymore. That is just there is not nearly enough of a market of people who will pay for those kind of games. The market has moved on, and EA recognizes that, and they don't make those kinds of games. People love to think that executives are dumb, but the fact is these guys are very good at what they do, and they've proven it with the dollars that they are earning. They recognize the market does not want an arcade NBA or an arcade FIFA or an arcade, Madden kind of game. They want simulation style games. So while I personally would love to see those come back, it's not going to happen. And it's a shame, but it's not going to happen. And it's not going to happen because there are not nearly enough people who will pay the money for that kind of a game. And contractually, I doubt that EA, unless they change their terms, and of course, because we don't know what those terms are, this is all hypothesis, right?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that they need to sell any NBA style game for $60, and nobody is going to pay $60 for
Any
a
retail game. Yeah.
for a game that isn't close to resembling what the expectations are for all the other games. That's why people haven't bought NBA Live, because it does not offer nearly the experience that the other games do. FIFA, Madden, NBA 2K16, even NHL, and it doesn't offer it because they have been killing and rebuilding and killing and rebuilding the game forever. It's not the developer's fault, right? It's just a series of decisions that have led them to where they are now.
Well, and they also had, we did a lot about this heading into September. There was no way, no matter what NBA Live was going to do, it could sell. There was no way it was going to sell. There were too many other games. There were beyond just NBA 2K taking the entire basketball market. There were like 7 other sports games, and there are other big games that came out, and there are other ones that are coming out that people are saving their money for.
Yes.
And nobody even played NBA Live on EA Access, period, Rich. There were only 100 and some people on at the most when I was playing the EA Access trial. So there was no interest in NBA Live to begin with. And then it was packed into they moved it up into September for some godforsaken reason, just because NBA 2K did. And that was the worst idea possible. They would have sold more waiting until early November. I guarantee it. It would not have been much more, but they would have sold more just by having that window opened a little bit. Because it was going to be number 4, number 5, number 6 on anybody's list, even if they love basketball.
Yeah.
So and then also, I have to point this out. Sean O'Brien, who was very active before release, has not tweeted since the day before NBA Live came out. And that is curious to me because they promised certain communication and certain support for the game. We haven't seen that yet. And they've kind of disappeared on us again. And this has happened before. So it's not like this is the first time ever. So that it may not necessarily mean anything, but it's not a good sign in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, social media, individual presence or non-presence was, that's sure, it definitely on the surface doesn't sound good, but who knows? Sean could have finally decided to take his first vacation in 3
Yeah.
years. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, who knows? And
Yeah.
you know, I'm sure if I reached out to him and the team, that they would come on and talk about it. So I might do that over the next few days. It's difficult again. As a fan of sports video games and somebody who is invested personally in the genre, it's difficult to see this happen. But it is a very difficult environment, right? I mean, there are other
It's a tough
games that,
business.
well, no, it's a difficult environment. It's a packed schedule. People don't have unlimited money.
Yeah.
$60 is a lot of money when there is a offering that is better. And unless you are a hardcore hoops junkie, it's hard to justify the time, right, and the
Mhm.
money. If you got NBA Live and NBA 2K both sitting next to you, it's hard to go to NBA Live. Like, it's just tough, right? And again, my question is not about the tactics of will there be an NBA Live 17. It's I'm more curious about what the strategy is that EA has with this brand. They don't like to walk away. They didn't want to lose baseball. If they
Yeah.
have their druthers, they still have baseball. But yeah, it is, no matter what, you can talk strategy all you want. It's still a dollars and cents. And at a certain point in time, there is a point where does not make sense to continue to invest in a brand. We don't know what that is. Maybe we'll find out at some point. Maybe we won't. Maybe it'll come out years later, like if you saw what came out about Destiny, the
Yeah.
original Destiny. I mean, sometimes the true story, and I say true in air quotes because you don't know. Again, it's a lot of anonymous people stuff, so you
You're so
never
skeptical,
really know.
Rich. You're so skeptical.
Hey, look, making video games is a very hard thing to do. People think it's easy. It's hard. Making a sports game on an annual basis is very
Yeah.
difficult. It's very expensive. A lot of things have to go right. So, and then like all the factors that you said, the packed release schedule, the troubled history, the damaged brand in the consumer's mind.
Mhm.
It's the perfect storm, evidently, that NBA Live 16 has walked right into.